السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ذلك ليعلم أني لم أخنه بالغيب وأن الله لا يهدي كيد الخائنين. وما أبرئ نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي إن ربي غفور رحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, once again, everyone, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today I'm going to try to speak to you once again about ayahs number 52 and 53 of Surah Yusuf. As you can tell from the title, I've named it his words or her words or his. That's because the majority of Mufassirun actually sided with the opinion that these words that are being quoted in 52 and 53 are the words of Yusuf alayhi salam. And there's a minority view also that it's the words of the wife of the minister. She's the one who's speaking. So what I'm going to try to do, even though I did talk about 52 last time, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to side with the opinion that this is the words of Yusuf alayhi salam and explain that point of view. Why are scholars looking at it that way? And what are they extracting from that if these are his words? Then we're going to go back and look at those same words from the point of view of, okay, these are the words of the wife of the minister, and explain it from that point of view. The thing is, arguably, both of them, it can be looked at both ways. There are compelling reasons to look at it both ways. I personally am more inclined towards the position that this is the wife of the minister speaking. But because there's so much scholarship and so many that have sided with the former opinion, I don't just want to dismiss it. I wanted to hear it out and really understand it as if putting my own bias aside and saying, okay, I'm not convinced of that position as much. Let's put that opinion, my own personal bias or opinion aside. Let's understand what is being said about that position and what is being learned from that position, and then move on to the other position. So, at the end of it, Sheikh Suhaib and I kind of walked away from the conversation today saying that perhaps Allah wanted this kind of a dichotomy, meaning you should be able to look at it both ways. And perhaps Allah is teaching us two things at the same time. Sometimes, I know it's kind of silly, but sometimes you have in movies, you have one character in one scene and another character in another scene saying exactly the same words, and they kind of have a gotcha moment where they're saying exactly the same words in different situations, and they mean two different things by it, but the words are shared, right? They're saying exactly the same words, but they both mean it from different intentions, and they're trying to communicate something else from it, right? And that's kind of like the jigs kind of thing that kids play with, is the kind of thing that may be going on here in these two ayat. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually take the opinion that it is the words of Yusuf alayhi salam, translate this for you guys, and kind of explain what that could mean for us, what we can learn from it. Then go back and look at it again as the words of Zuleikha. Again, these are ayahs 52 and 53, where there is a debate. Nothing else has a debate. This is where there's a debate. So again, now I'm going to look at it as, the truth has come out. She confessed that she tried to seduce him, and he's the one that's telling the truth. The next words are words of Yusuf in round one, as we go through, okay? ذَلِكَ لِيَعْلَمَ أَنِّي لَمْ أَخُنْهُ بِالْغَيْبِ. So let me set the scene for you. That means there's been a quick jump in the storytelling of the Quran, meaning, the king had called her to the court, right? So she was in front of the king's court and all those other women when she confessed. Okay, now the case is over. It's been proven that Yusuf is innocent. But Yusuf isn't there, alayhi salam. He's still where? In prison. So the cupbearer or the messenger has been sent back to prison to recover Yusuf alayhi salam. And he's still not in the presence of the king. He's just now having his second encounter with the cupbearer who said, hey, king's calling you, right? Or actually third encounter now. First time he interpreted the dream, then he said, come back, and now in this encounter, what's he gonna say? He says, ذَلِكَ, that لِيَعْلَمَ أَنِّي لَمْ أَخُنْهُ بِالْغَيْبِ. That is so that he knows that I didn't deceive him and I didn't cheat him while in the unseen. Now that's a bit of a confusion what's going on here. Let me try to explain this in as easy words as possible, in the most coherent possible interpretation of the varying opinions that are here. First thing is that. What does dhalika here mean? It means from Yusuf alayhi salam's point of view, I asked that this investigation start. I posed that question about what happened, what's the state of those women that cut their hands. I reopened this case for what purpose? So that the king knows, لِيَعْلَمَ, so that the king knows, أَنِّي لَمْ أَخُنْهُ بِالْغَيْبِ, that I did not cheat him in the unseen. The second him is not the king, it's the minister. So let me put this in simple words for you now. With not pronouns, but with nouns, so it's easier to understand. He's telling the cupbearer, he's telling him, I did all of that. I made you go back and ask that question so that the king could know that I did not cheat my master, meaning the minister, Al-Aziz, when he was away. Bil-Ghayb in the unseen means when he was not home. That's what he means. If you read it that way, what is Yusuf alayhi salam trying to do? He's trying to clear his name, not with the minister. He's trying to clear his name with the king. And he's trying to tell the king that I'm not the kind of person who would have been disloyal even to my own master. Because, and then he says, and that Allah does not guide the scheme of those who cheat. I already know this principle. That's why I would never be one to cheat. Now, why is he saying that to the king? If you read it in this way, then what you're saying, what you're understanding from it, is that Yusuf alayhi salam has already positioned himself talking about the interpretation of that dream of the king as if he is the one dictating the policy. He didn't just say this is what it means. He said, you will be cropping, you will be saving, you better do this, you better do this. He was talking top down. An inmate in prison talking as if he's in charge of policy. You can tell from the tone that Yusuf alayhi salam took that he understands that what's coming ahead is him being placed in charge of this crisis. That's what's coming ahead. If that is coming ahead, now part of that could be it's revelation from Allah. He already knows that he's going to be in this position. By the way, it's no surprise that a couple of ayat later, as we will see, he actually nominates himself. The king said, "Astakhlishu li nafsi." I want him in my exclusive service. That's what the king says. But that wasn't, and he said to him, "Innaka al-yawma ladayna makinun amin." He says, you, when he brought Yusuf, he said, you are going to be in our company. You have a permanent station here, Makin, and your job is safe now. Nobody can take your job from you now. This is a permanent position. This is not an elected position. This is not up for review. You have this job for life. It's kind of like the Supreme Court judge position, right? It's a nomination for life. The only way to get out of that is if you die, right? So that's the position he's been given. But he says that's not enough. He says, "Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ardi." Put me in charge of the treasury of the land. So Yusuf alayhi salam, it wasn't enough for him that he got that position. Again, that's tomorrow's discussion. I'm getting ahead to help you understand something behind. He knows, it seems he knows he's about to be put in that position. But in order to have that position, you have to be someone that can be trusted 100%, 1,000,000%. He can't, because he's going to have to make a lot of spontaneous decisions. He's going to have to make executive decisions when the king isn't there. And you know, kings, usually when somebody is in their government who's very popular, who's making big decisions, kings can get insecure. Is he vying for the kingdom? Is he making these moves so he can impress the people? So one day he can take my place? Is that what's happening? And what does Yusuf alayhi salam say? Actually, I'm the kind of person who would never be disloyal to those that have authority over me, just like I was never disloyal to my master when he wasn't away. The accusation was that I couldn't be trusted with his family, with his household when he wasn't away. And if that doubt can be seated in the king's mind, then even if he gets hired today, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 months from now, you say, well, I mean, his previous employer couldn't trust him. I mean, there is this thing floating about him, so I'm not sure if I can trust him either. In the heat of the moment, he'd be so impressed with the interpretation of the dream that he would hire him. But later on, the seed of doubt can be planted. It can keep on growing. And then again, it goes back to the larger problem. If Yusuf alayhi salam is being questioned in terms of his integrity for doing his job, he's not going to be able to manage this crisis, which means people are going to die of starvation. That's the greater problem in his mind. In order to avoid that problem, he says, I've started this investigation because without my name being cleared and all doubt being removed, I couldn't be in that job. And I wouldn't be able to do my job if my king isn't completely trusting of me. And if there's questions about my character and my trustworthiness that are floating around, then I'm not going to be able to hold that position long. And even if I do, it won't be effective. He'll start questioning everything that I do and the motives behind everything that I do. You know, it's two things. even if you have a job and you have a manager above you or a CEO above you, right? And there's two types of people in those kinds of roles. Either the person above you trusts you and your decisions, or they don't trust you. Now, if they don't trust you, there's two reasons. Basically, there's lots of them, but there's two basic reasons. One basic reason is they think that you are going to take their job. You're too good at it, and you want their job. So they become insecure, and every time you do something good, they're questioning why you're actually doing it. Are you doing it because you want my job, huh? You're doing overtime because you want to impress the employer, huh? Oh, I heard you talk to the other team. Oh, you want them to like you as a better leader than me, huh? In other words, they start questioning everything you do because they're kind of insecure about you. Yeah, that's one scenario. Another scenario is you think this person is no good at their job, or they can't actually be trusted. They're not good at what they do. So you have to question everything they do. In both situations, the employer is going to keep questioning you about everything that you're doing and putting hurdles in your path. And if that's the case, you're not able to do your job. You can't do the work that you're supposed to do. So Yusuf alayhi salam, if we read it in this way, the reading would be, I did all of this so the king would know that I did not deceive the minister when the minister was away. And that Allah never guides the schemes made by those who cheat. And in other words, so I want the king to know that cheaters will always get caught, as the minister just got caught, basically. The wrong way to read this would be, oh, I wanted the minister to know that I didn't cheat him. The minister already knows you didn't cheat him. The minister is the one who falsely put you in prison. The minister already said, ignore this. The minister was already shown proof of your innocence. The minister already knows you since you were a kid and knows you would never have cheated. He's not looking to impress him. He's looking to actually impress upon the king that he's a reliable candidate and a reliable, nomination for the job that's coming, even though the job hasn't even been mentioned yet. But obviously, when you are going in if I'm an employer and I'm looking for an employee, then what qualifications am I looking for? Well, certainly I'm looking for someone who has the right talent, right? If they're not qualified to do the work, I can't hire them. And I'm looking for someone who can be trusted. Because if the boss has to look over your shoulder, over at your laptop, over at your desktop to see what you're browsing all the time, and the boss can't do anything else, what's the point of hiring you? It's counterproductive. The fact that you're getting paid is so that you can do the work and you don't have to be watched, right? So you have to be trustworthy. He has to leave the keys in your hands. If that's the case, then trustworthiness and competence. Let me use those words again. Trustworthiness and competence are the keys to getting a job. Like a good employer will hire you for these two reasons, if they know what they're doing. You could have the most impressive resume, but I wouldn't want to hire you if I sense that you can't be trusted. Or you could be the most trustworthy person, but you don't know what you're doing. You still can't get a job. Interestingly, I know I'm obsessed with those parallels with Musa alayhi salam. When he was hired by the old man, what did the girl say to her father? She said, the best hire you can make is someone strong and someone trustworthy. Inna khayra man istajab al-qawiy al-amin. Al-qawiy al-amin. The strong, meaning capable of doing the work, and trustworthy, which is exactly what's happening here. What's the strength of Yusuf? His intelligence. That's his strength. And the fact that he's trustworthy needs to get established. You see? So now, وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي كَيْدَ الْخَائِنِينَ, that Allah does not guide the scheme of those who cheat, can also be, you can read it here as a dig that's taken on all those who cheated against him, whose schemes are now have already unraveled. So the way I want you to imagine this is, so there's a lot of back and forth. The trial happened, and then the cupbearer has come back to talk to Yusuf alayhi salam, but the cupbearers come back to Yusuf alayhi salam to recover him, to take him to the king, which is coming a little bit later. We've already seen, bring him to me. There's going to be another bring him to me, okay? But there's a lot of superimposition of the timeline, right? So now you can almost imagine that the cupbearer is there talking to Yusuf alayhi salam, and he says to him, you know what happened? I actually did the investigation. I already told the king, and the king called everybody, and all of this happened. And as Yusuf alayhi salam is hearing all of this, he says, and I did all of that so that he could know that I didn't cheat my master, and that Allah does not guide the scheme. Do you understand now the context in which Yusuf may have said this, right? And now if he said this, then the next words are also his. Very interesting words. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. and I don't declare my own personal self innocent. I don't absolve myself. You know, you may have, maybe absolve is a big word for some of you, like you maybe watch crime shows or something. Astaghfirullah al-azim, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. The assailant has been absolved of all crimes. Absolved means proven innocent. I'm absolved of this. I didn't do it. So bari actually means free, and tabri is to say I'm innocent of it. He says I'm not declaring myself innocent. Let me first translate literally, then we'll try to figure out what he means by this. Why is he saying this? I don't declare myself innocent. Inna nafsa la ammaratun bisu. The nafs, which I'll translate here as the inner self, or even more accurately, there's a part of yourself inside you that keeps commanding to do evil, that keeps on telling you to do evil over and over and over again. And he says, la ammaratun, which means the self or a part of the self, for sure, absolutely, over and over again, keeps on commanding and advising you to do evil, commanding one to do evil. Illa ma rahima rabbi, except for the occasions or except for the times and circumstances that my master's mercy would come on such a person. Other than the mercy of Allah happening on occasion, the nafs inside is pushing for evil to happen over and over and over again. Certainly my master is forgiving, loving, and caring always. Austin, you need to stop. I'm getting distracted. Okay. And your mom's getting distracted too. So those two things are happening, and now you're famous on the internet for distraction. Okay, thanks. Okay, now since it's like calm, there you go. Unless you want to, you can sit. Okay. Hi, internet. Okay. So, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Let's understand how not to understand this verse. In the previous ayah, he says, Yusuf alayhi salam says, Allah does not guide those who cheat. And then in the next ayah, he says, but I don't consider myself innocent. I'm not calling myself innocent. And some of the worst interpretations of this historically that have existed is actually some people going on and saying, you know, that means he probably did something bad. And he therefore said, I'm not saying I'm perfect either. I did mess up a little bit here and there. And they're attributing some level of wrongdoing between him and the minister's wife. Some have even actually made up a narration attributed to Jibreel alayhi salam, that when he said this, that I didn't cheat him, and Allah does not guide the scheming of those who cheat, that Jibreel alayhi salam came to him, ma'adallah, came to him, and he said to him, what about the time where you know, and he gets explicit with him. And he says, well, I'm not saying I'm innocent. And that's when in response to Jibreel, he said, I'm not saying I'm innocent. All of that's made up. It has no basis. What is the right basis of looking at this? If it is attributed to Yusuf alayhi salam, if it's attributed to Yusuf alayhi salam, it's as follows. In a court case, you've got one issue. And in that one issue, someone is innocent and someone is guilty. And now in this one issue, in this one court case, some people have been proven as guilty. Isn't that the case? They've been proven as guilty. Which means Yusuf alayhi salam has been proven what? Innocent. But when you win a case, you are only innocent in that case. That doesn't mean that they're the devil and you're an angel. That you are innocent in all cases and they are guilty in all cases. What happens sometimes in trial or in dispute, if someone is proven right and someone is proven wrong, the one proven wrong is demonized, right? And the one that's proven right is basically turned into an angel, like they're innocent. No, they've got other issues. Just they're innocent of this crime, you understand? And Yusuf alayhi salam wants, the king to understand something. I am still just human. Just because I was innocent, just because I didn't do this, doesn't mean that I don't have to face the same temptations, the same challenges that everybody else has to face. Doesn't mean that my inner self will not tell me to do evil things. The difference is I won't listen to it, I'll fight it. But doesn't mean that I'm some kind of angel that doesn't have inclinations. And by saying that these people have cheated in this case, I'm not saying that I'm the one that's perfect. And this is important because, you see, in public office or in public positions, we are more interested in the image than the actual person. Because for a politician, we want the image of perfection. That's why he needs to go in America, he needs to go to a church and kiss some babies if they're not going to get COVID-19. And kiss some babies and take pictures at the altar and talk about God or talk about family. He could have all kinds of crises going on, all kinds of messed up stuff going on, but he'll talk about morality and justice. He could be one of the most unjust people in his personal life. Talk about freedom and greatness and all of this stuff, right? The clear hypocrisy. Why? Because image is more important than reality. And anything that demonstrates that you're just a person, well, why would people put you on a pedestal then? You need to appear as larger than life. Everything about you needs to be aggrandized and, blown out of proportion and to the point where people almost worship you. And when they worship you and they put you on that pedestal, then basically you can do no wrong. You can do no wrong. We're living in interesting political times where certain people have been placed at such a pedestal, they could do anything now. And in the eyes of those who have decided to worship them, they can do no wrong. They can't. Yusuf a.s. understands that when he manages this crisis, what is going to happen? Aren't people going to idolize him? Aren't people going to say the savior of Egypt? Oh, and he's so saintly, and he's so righteous, and he's so good, and look at his character, and stories will be told about him? Isn't he going to be made into this larger-than-life figure? And when he's made into this larger-than-life figure, he needs people to understand this is not a healthy way of thinking about someone. You need to understand that Allah made all of us what first? Human beings. Don't lose sight of that. Just because I'm innocent, just because you may be impressed that I didn't lose my character when I had the opportunity to, and I have the same inclinations that any other young man would have, and I controlled myself, that I didn't lose my faith even when I was in prison, that I carried myself in the best way no matter what, and even when I had the opportunity to get free, I was more interested in my dignity than I was in my physical freedom. Just because these high qualities have been demonstrated, don't start thinking of me as someone who doesn't face temptations. This is a very powerful statement coming from a prophet of all things, a prophet, alayhi salam. Why? Because it's teaching us how to place expectations. On the one hand, every one of us has to meet the expectations Allah has put on us. But on the other hand, you and I cannot put false expectations on another human being of some level of righteousness, of some level of angelic behavior, of some level of flawlessness, or their nafs. Man, this person, they've memorized the Quran, their recitation is so perfect, subhanAllah, their nafs never bothers them because their tajweed is so perfect. That's why, alhamdulillah, these people of Quran, they never get evil thoughts. That's why when they come in the room, Noor has walked in. Do people do this with religious folks? Do people do this with imams and sheikhs and whoever? Somebody taught you a little bit about Islam. MashaAllah, this person, when I hear them speak, it makes me cry. I'm sure they do. But that doesn't mean they walk on water, bro. That doesn't mean they don't have problems getting up to Fajr too. That doesn't mean they don't lose their temper sometimes. That doesn't mean they don't have temptations. That doesn't mean they don't slip. We're all human beings. And there are people whose righteousness and their character and their goodness we look up to. And I'm not talking about prophets anymore, because in our creed we consider prophets free of sin. We're not even talking about prophets anymore. But Yusuf a.s. did make a generalization, didn't he? He said the nafs keeps commanding to evil. He's saying something remarkable. The people will not accept him as a prophet. You have to understand, we accept him as a prophet. Egypt doesn't accept him as a prophet. Egypt accepts him as a remarkable human being. Egypt accepts him as a genius savior of the nation, as someone in a very high political office, as someone who was able to absolve and clear his name out of a very dirty scandal and exposed a great deal of corruption. Egypt sees him as all of those things, right? And he's talking about that image, even as high as you put me, don't make me beyond flaw. Why also? Think about the religious mindset of the Egyptian people of the time. Didn't they have priests that claimed to interpret dreams? And priests are supposed to be their holy people, and holy people are always above, beyond flaw, right? They're popified. They can't sin. They can't have issues. Everybody else can have issues. They can't have issues. They'll tell everybody right and wrong. They're above that right or wrong. They're in a higher place. And even when they do evil, it's for a righteous cause. Right? That's what it's turned into. He's not going to be part of that scam. And he's already saying that even while he's still coming out of prison. He's not even in that position yet. He hasn't even asked for that position yet. But he says, I need you to understand I'm just human. And النفس إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي. The nafs, the self, he doesn't say myself commands to evil. He says the self keeps on commanding. Amara is sigatul mubalagha. Fa'al. Fa'al is like Qahhar or Wahhab or Ghaffar in the names of Allah. Or in Arabic, there are other words like Qassas and Khabbaz. Those are also words that rhyme similarly. You'll notice there's a shadda and an alif, right? So Qahhar, Wahhab, Ghaffar, things like that, right? And what they have in common is repetition. A khabbaz, khubz is bread, yeah? So khabbaz is a baker because he keeps making bread over and over again. Okay? Qassa means to cut. Qassas is someone who cuts over and over again. A butcher is called a qassas. Okay? Allah's name is Ghaffar. Maghfirah is forgiveness. Ghaffar means the one who keeps on forgiving over and over again. Unlike us. Man, I forgive you last time you messed up again. You can only do that with me like 3 times. Like 3 strikes, you're out. Allah doesn't have a 3 strikes rule. He has a Ghaffar principle. He keeps on forgiving over and over again. Allah's name is Wahhab. He gives gifts over and over and over again. So whenever it's something, and some scholars of Saf argue that this pattern is used for someone who does something par excellence, meaning they do it with excellence. They keep on doing it like they're professional at it. That's why this is used for professionals, right? Like Khabbaz and Qassas, etc., is professionals, actually. If that is the case, then Yusuf alayhi salam is telling us a timeless reality of something inside of us that keeps on telling us and keeps on telling us and keeps on telling us and keeps on telling us, and it don't stop, even if you memorize Surah Al-Baqarah. It don't stop if you listen to 1,000 lectures or gave 1,000 lectures. It does not stop if you did Hajj. It does not stop if you did Umrah, if you did I'tikaf, if you did worship of Allah, if you fasted Mondays and Thursdays for 25 years straight. It does not stop. When the devil is changing Ramadan, your nafs is not changed. The nafs is still there. And the thing that I didn't mention to you is it's not, he doesn't say myself. He said the self, right? As if to say, there is someone inside me. There's someone inside me that's not actually me. And that part of me, it's not me, it's a part of me. Just like this hand is not me. This hand is not me. It's a part of me, right? So when I say my hand hurts, you can also say I'm hurting, but more specifically, you can say my hand is hurting. It's a part of you, but it's not you itself. You understand? But there's a deep connection between the two. Now, the nafs is, you can think of it like an organ inside of us, a spiritual or psychological organ inside of us. One part of that organ, one muscle in it, its only job is to tell you to do messed up things. Its only job, and not tell you once. Tell you over and over and over and over and over again. Freud would call it the id. He classified id, ego and superego. This would be the id, the animal urges, the appetites, to uncontrolled rage, uncontrolled lust, uncontrolled greed. It's telling you to take. It's telling you to, if you have the option to respond to something, what is the most hurtful way in which I can respond that will get the point across? It will give you that option. It won't always just be the devil. There's a وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah says the nafs that Allah balanced. So there's a balance means opposing weights. Yes? There's opposing weights. And one side, he said he inspired it to explode, and the other to protect itself, meaning good and evil inside of the self. The Chinese would call it the yin and the yang. There's two opposing forces inside of us. Forget the devil. The devil is just there to make this evil side that can exist inside us, to fire it up. That's all. The engine's already there. The accelerator's already there. He just puts some more gasoline in. That's all he does. The machinery is already in place. We already have it inside of us. Even Yusuf alayhi salam acknowledges, I have something inside me, just like everybody does, who will actually compel us to do good. The suggestion to do wrong will come. Why is it? This is why you understand that back then, when those women tried to have their way with him and do all kinds of shamelessness with him, what did he say to Allah? He said, prison is better, and if not, إِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنَّ أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ. If you don't steer their scheme away from me, I'm going to incline towards them. I'm going to lose my brakes. I'm putting a stop to something inside me that wants to erupt. Something inside me wants this. And I stop it. There's a war inside ourselves. There's something inside ourselves that wants us to obey it. And then there's something inside of us that wants us to obey Allah. And there's a battle happening inside. He says, I'm not telling you I don't have a battle inside, because every human being has a battle inside. The nafs absolutely commands over and over and over again to do evil, except on occasions when Allah will, my master's mercy shall descend, rahmah shall descend. This is one of the most profound philosophical, psychological statements in the Quran, in my opinion. And it's actually, regardless of the fact if it's Yusuf saying it or the minister's wife, it's still a remarkable truth that's being said. Either way, what's that truth? That truth is that Allah put inside human beings something He did not put inside animals. Animals have an urge and they follow it. Human beings have an urge and they want to follow it, and the only thing that stops a non-believing human being is they think of worldly consequences. They have the urge to speed, but they see a cop, right? The cop gives them taqwa. A man has the urge to cheat on his wife, but he says she's going to sue me. I'm going to lose the kids. This is going to happen. That's something, right? And he's going to stop because of what consequences? Worldly consequences. But Allah put inside human beings something beyond the sense. So basically, by the way, animals also, and like a hunter animal, a lion or like a hyena or a coyote or something, can see a prey, right? And it wants to attack, but it might see a lion coming, and it might think twice because it's thinking of worldly consequences. So what I'm saying is, if you think of us that way, we're just more sophisticated, but we're still only thinking of worldly consequences, isn't it? But Allah put something inside of us, a light inside of us, a higher moral calling inside of us, a loyalty not to our body, but a loyalty to our Maker inside of us. A love not of desire, but a love of seeing Him pleased with us, feeling Him pleased with us. And that love is powerful enough to overcome the most powerful urges. And that is a rahmah of Allah that He gave believers that did not come from this world, that is not of their own making, that spiritual power to overcome temptation, to overcome the urge to do whatever, evil related to greed, evil related to revenge, evil related to slander, evil related to lust. It doesn't matter what kind of evil. There's a power Allah put inside by His rahmah alone that allows us to fight this nafs that keeps telling us to go to the dark side. And there's a light Allah put inside of us that can make the darkness evaporate. And He calls that except for the times and occasions, or except for the mercy that my Master has shown. Illa ma rahima rabbi. That is a remarkable thing. Now we're learning that without Allah's rahmah, without Allah, and by the way, we're not just saying without Allah's empowerment, because I described it as empowerment, but that's not the word used here. Rahimah is used. When Allah shows rahmah to this person, what does that mean? That there are occasions in which, because you were good to Allah, Allah will respond in kind in a special way of being good to you. He's good to me anyway by making my heart beat. He's good to me anyway by making my eyes function. But on those occasions where I was going to walk towards darkness, He's going to be good to me by giving me the strength to walk towards light instead. That's going to be a special rahmah from Allah that comes to me. And that's not something I deserve. That's something coming from Allah as an act of His love, as an act of His care, which is what rahmah is, loving care. And then He says, Inna Rabbi ghafurun rahim. Certainly my Master is extremely forgiving, always loving and caring. In other words, look, all of you think about your nafs. Even the ones that have been, have schemed and done all of this wrong. Look inside yourselves. Turn back to Allah. Ask Him to forgive. Even if you chose the darker, side before, even if you went the way of evil before, it's okay. You're still alive. Allah's rahmah is still there. Allah is still extremely forgiving, extremely covering of mistakes, extremely loving and merciful. So it's remarkable that he held back from doing da'wah when there was a crisis situation. But now that his credibility is established, he didn't just say, I wanted my name to be cleared, which is ayah number 52, but he brought up Allah in there too. And now he says, and by the way, I'm not perfect, but I know who is. My Rabb is. And there's stuff inside me that wants to pull me away from my Rabb, but my Rabb keeps bringing me back. Inna Rabbi ghafurur rahim. He's the one who provides. He brought Allah up again, subhanAllah. But this time he's not doing da'wah just to a cup bearer or to a bread maker. Now he's actually giving da'wah to the king. Like these are, and you can imagine, he's still not talking to the king directly. How do I know that? By the way, in the 54th ayah, قَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي. The king said, bring him to me. Obviously, the king would say, bring him to me if he wasn't in front of him, right? So these are the words that are being relayed to the king, perhaps. Or at the very least, even if you say that only this conversation is when the cupbearer came back, one way you can play this out is, go tell the king this. But another way is, the cupbearer came, or another time, right? And he says, the case has been solved. They confessed. You're free to come. The king wants you to come. And he's not having this conversation to relate to the king. He's only having this conversation with the cupbearer. And even the cupbearer is listening and saying, I did cheat you. I did cheat you. I could have been more honest with you. And at that time, when he feels guilty, Yusuf alayhi salam has the grand personality to say to him, no, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying my nafs doesn't have bad in it. The nafs commands to bad. That's what it does. And Allah has mercy. In other words, instead of saying, my nafs didn't command me bad, but yours did, look at you. He said, no, my nafs hits me too. And that's what the nafs does. But illa ma rahima rabbi, except for the rahmah that Allah shows, my Rabb shows, He forgives. So even the cupbearer, he's putting his hand on his shoulder saying, it's okay, bro. It's okay, I got you. Just ask Allah's forgiveness. How beautiful. How incredibly beautiful that he actually didn't let the cupbearer feel bad. He consoled him too. Because he must have felt ashamed, man. He's going to get in this top position. The king's going to hire him, and he's going to come after me. Oh, you? No longer cupbearer. You clean the animal mess. You go clean the dung of the horses. You do that. You got a new job now. Couldn't you do that? Oh, you like to forget things, huh? I forgot. You have a job here? No, you don't. He could do that. But that's not what he does. He fills that man with hope. He says, no, don't feel. I know you feel bad that you did that to me, but don't feel bad. So this is if we look at these words as the words of who? Yusuf alayhi salam. 52 and 53. Now I'm going to reverse. Go back again to 52 and 53. And now we're going to look at them as the words of the wife of the minister. The same wife that tries to seduce him. The same wife that schemed against him. The same wife that was so proud to say, if he doesn't do what I tell him to, I'm going to make sure he gets thrown in jail. He's going to get thrown in jail, and I will make sure that he's humiliated. I want him to be humiliated. That same lady finds Allah. She testifies before the king. The truth has come out. It's been exposed. I was the one who tried to seduce him. He's always been the one that's told the truth. He's the kind of person who always tells the truth. He's right. I can't hide behind the cover-up anymore. I did lie. She confessed. This should be enough, right? Confession done. But then, and the reason I'm compelled to look at it this way also, I've decided not to look at it one way or the other. I'm looking at it both ways. Like I said in the beginning, it may be that the same words are coming out of the mouth of Yusuf and out of her, but they are meaning two different lessons. And they converge and they diverge at the same time, which is a remarkable literary feature of these two ayat. Anyway, so now we're looking at these same words from the point of view of her. And I've come forward and testified and I've said all of this. And the reason I said this openly in public now is that I want him to know, this time the him would be Yusuf. That I did not cheat him in the unseen, which means when he went to jail, I did not continue to lie about him or spread lies about him or tout my innocence. In fact, I stopped disparaging him. All those years, I didn't continue to harm him. And I also want him to know that when I stand here in trial testifying, that I did not speak ill of him again, trying to defend myself. I came clean. Please let him know that I came clean. He's not the one that's going to punish her. Who's going to punish her? The king is, if anything, right? So why does she want him to know that she came clean? In the last session, I told you she found Islam. These are her words. She's found Islam. How do we know that? She mentioned Allah by name. Allah does not guide the scheme of those who do wrong. So she's found Allah, which means she's become Muslim. And the one who gave her Islam is the one she had thrown into. There's an old axiom in Arabic: you should fear the evil from the one you do good to. Be mindful of the evil of the one you do good to. You know why that is? That doesn't mean when you do good to someone, wear protective gear. What that means is sometimes you do good to someone. When you do good to someone, you become, you put your guard down. You assume that because you're good to them, they would only be good to you, right? And then you can become naive. But that's not how that works. Yusuf ﷺ knew before coming out of prison that if those women are still around and they're still trying to protect their reputation, they'll make new lies against me. Remember that? From her point of view now, I want him to know that I've testified openly in public so that he doesn't have the anxiety that I will continue to disparage him. Please let him know I'm done with all of that. And I want him to know that I learned my lesson. Allah does not guide the scheme of those who cheat. I am no longer going to come up with any kind of diabolical schemes to try to undermine Yusuf. Yusuf, please let him know he has nothing to worry about as far as I'm concerned. Just please let him know that. Because he still might be worried about what I'm going to do. And actually, there's truth to that, because before he comes out, he says, what's going on with the women who cut their hands? Which means he's worried about what kind of new scheme they're going to pull. What tricks are they going to pull now? And the leader of them basically comes out and says, no, he doesn't have to worry about that now. Please let him know that. So that's her words of regret. What does that tell you? That a person can redeem themselves. It can tell you a person can be in a pretty bad place. They can be, and when I was describing the wrong that she did, I did not hold back. I even offended people when I described the wrong that she did. Because the Quran didn't hold back in the wrong that she did. It described her wrong in very evil ways, in very arrogant, Fir'aun-like arrogant ways. But at the same time, in contrast to Fir'aun, who still could have some good in him, the good that was in her actually came out. She's actually found Allah. She's actually found her way back. And I explained in the previous lecture why she may not have openly spoken up. At least from my point of view, that would be a compelling argument why she didn't speak up, but she didn't continue to disparage him when he was away. Now, if that is the case, what Allah is telling us is it doesn't matter how messed up you are. It doesn't matter what you did in the past to hurt someone else, how far you went to wrong them. You can redeem yourself. You can stop scheming. You can put an end to it. You're not, oh, I've already gone this far. Some people do a lot of wrong and they're like, I've already gone this far, might as well go all the way. This is what it is now. It is what it is now. That's not what she's stuck in. It is what it is. What do you want me to like? What's going to happen when she admits this? Think about this from her point of view. What is going to happen to her marriage? What's going to happen to her social reputation? What's going to happen about the way people look at her? Because this is not going to be a private conversation. This is happening in front of the king and the entire nation. In fact, we're talking about it. We're talking about it right now. This is not a small thing. Can you imagine you being on trial like this and the world is talking about you over and over again? How uncomfortable would that be for you? How uncomfortable would that be for me? How difficult would that be? She's putting herself in this position. She's exposing herself, her flaw, because she did harm to someone else. So she's coming out and saying, I tried to disparage someone else, I need to come clean, regardless of the social consequences. And this is actually a pretty brave thing to do. I have to commend this woman for doing something that most people are not able to do. Most people have fear of people more than they have of Allah. Even though it's easy to fear Allah, that's my point. Most people have fear of Allah when it's easy, and fear of people when it's convenient. and you choose between the two. You're not choose between the two. It's very hard to fear Allah when it's going to make people upset. It's very hard to fear Allah when fearing Allah means nobody's going to like you anymore. It's very hard to fear Allah, which means being honest, and when you're honest, you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your family. You're going to lose money. You're going to lose status. You're going to lose your position in the family. You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose. Very hard to be honest in those situations. Very hard to choose the fear, because honesty would mean you fear Allah. His fear of Allah over and over again. What quality of Yusuf keeps coming up? إِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ أَيُّهَا الصِّدِّيقُ إِنَّهُ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. Truth. Fear of people will make you lie. Fear of people will make you scheme. Fear of people will make you cover things up. Fear of Allah, you can just be yourself. You can just be, and you can only have to fear Allah. Because people will come, and then people will talk, and then people will go inside the ground one day. And it'll be over. And then it's just you and Allah. That's really all that matters in the end. She understood that finally. She mustered up the courage to understand that, to internalize that, to believe that is something else, to live that is something else. We're reading about it, so we're learning about it. She lived it. She lived that when you cheat someone, you cannot succeed. Allah will not let you succeed. Allah will not guide your scheme into a conclusion that you want to see. And then she goes on to say, and even though I am coming and saying this, I have always been someone who tried to protect my reputation. I have been someone who was more concerned with my image and how people see me, like those women, the way they see me, the way my husband would see me, the way people would see me, even the way Yusuf should see me. I was so concerned with how everybody else should see me and how I should be in this, beyond blemish image. She comes out and says, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي, and I no longer want to I no longer want to declare myself innocent. I am not declaring myself innocent. In other words, I'm all done with that fake innocence business. I'm not saying anymore that I'm innocent. Even though she's already admitted the guilt, right? Why is she going on to say, it's kind of repetition now. Why is she saying I'm not declaring myself innocent or not considering myself innocent? She's saying I have let that obsession go. What was her obsession? I want everybody to see me as the victim and everybody else as the perpetrator. I want everybody to see me as the innocent one. I don't need that anymore. I don't do that anymore. I'm done with that. I can tell you, inna an-nafsa la'ammaratun bis-su'. If we're reading this in a general sense, I've already explained how that works when I was describing the Yusuf reading of it, right? So I won't go to that because that's in common between the two. But I'll tell you how this reads from her personal point of view, in addition. From her personal point of view, I'm not saying that I don't have any demons. I'm not saying that I'm innocent. In fact, the self that is inside me keeps on telling me to do wrong. And it's something that I struggled with, and I still struggle with. Except for the times that, except the mercy of my master could also mean, except that now Allah has finally shown me or given me His mercy, that I'm able to overcome that. But it was not something easy for me. I had a problem. I struggled with it. And finally, my master showed me mercy. It can also mean that this nafs keeps commanding to evil, except the cases when Allah shows rahmah, like Yusuf. Yusuf also had his nafs, and he also had temptation, but Allah showed him rahmah, and I admire that, and I want that for myself. So at this point, she's basically saying, I admit this, and though on the one hand, it is a crime against Yusuf, it's also been a crime against myself, it's been a crime against my Rabb. And now I turn to my Rabb. And I don't consider myself beyond flaw. I do have a flaw. I do have a problem. So inna an-nafsa la'ammaratun bis-su' illa ma rahima rabbi. Inna rabbi ghafurur rahim. And then she turns to Allah and says, see, the thing is, whose forgiveness should she be seeking? She could seek the forgiveness of Yusuf. She could seek the forgiveness of the husband. She could seek the forgiveness of the women she compelled into this situation. She could seek the forgiveness of the society that she, undermined. The community that she lied to about her state. There's lots of people she could seek forgiveness of. And I'm sure she did. But the thing is, and here's the hard part, you can ask someone to forgive you, but they're not obligated to forgive you. They're not. You can do wrong to somebody, and ask for forgiveness, and they may or may not forgive you. And they're under no obligation to forgive you. They don't owe you that. They don't owe me that. However, you did your, as far as Allah is concerned, you did your part if you showed remorse. If you did your part and asked for forgiveness. And then the only real forgiveness you need to seek is the forgiveness of Allah Azza wa Jal. You don't expect for people to turn, and because some people, when they ask for forgiveness, then they say, but I said sorry, why didn't you forgive me? As if I owe you that. I don't, forgiveness isn't owed. Forgiveness isn't deserved. Forgiveness is a choice by the one who decides to or not decide to. Why can't you just forgive? Because it's mine. And the fact that someone has that attitude means they really shouldn't be forgiven. Right? That's not the attitude with which we seek forgiveness. And the same, what she does though, is Inna Rabbi Ghafurur Rahim, my master is extremely forgiving. In other words, she acknowledges that when I make tawbah and when I admit my own faults before my Rabb, and when I turn to him and I declare that he's the one who forgives and always shows love and care, I don't consider myself a cursed creature. I did some pretty accursed things. I mean, put it in philosophical, from theological points of view, she caused immeasurable harm and pain to a prophet. That's not a small crime. That's a pretty tall order. To cause pain to a prophet that Allah would record in his final revelation to this detail. That is not a small crime. And yet that same Rabb records that she has hope that her master forgives. Some pretty big things Allah forgives, isn't it? Some pretty tall order. What I told you about slander is people who engage that can be cursed in this life and in the next. That's what she did, right? Slander? And here she is, turning back to Allah, and Allah is forgiving, without a doubt. Allah is still loving and caring, without a doubt. For the one who wants to turn back to Allah, the curse is lifted, the anger is lifted, the consequences of scheming are lifted. You can come back to Allah, and those sins can wash off of you. Tawbah washes sins. Doesn't matter how ugly those sins were. Those sins don't just have to be sins against Allah. Like somebody made tawbah from doing shirk. Somebody made tawbah from saying something blasphemous. Somebody made tawbah from not praying anymore. Fine, those are all tawbah too. But you must turn to Allah for hurting people too. Asking Allah's forgiveness for hurting people. Those are His creation you hurt. You don't just ask for their forgiveness. You ask Allah's forgiveness. And then once you ask Allah's forgiveness, this is probably the most important part, you no longer hate yourself. You stop hating yourself. You see, self-hatred is a very easy way for you to stay away from Allah. She tells us something real about herself. I struggle with the nafs that keeps telling me to do wrong over and over again. Didn't she basically say that? Inna nafsa la'amaratun bisu. These are her words. If we go with that interpretation, these are her words. She's saying, my nafs keeps telling me to do wrong. There's something inside me that keeps pushing me to do the wrong thing over and over again. I have this thing inside me, a part of me, that's calling me to evil. I have to fight it every single day. And it's the rahmah of Allah that I'm able to fight it. And so on the one hand, I'm not an angel, but on the other hand, I do have Allah's rahmah, don't I? If I wouldn't have Allah, if I was worthless, if I was this cursed creature, this hated creature, why would Allah have rahmah on me? If I was so cursed and beyond hope, why would I say Allah is forgiving? Allah is loving and caring. Some people have this view. I've met people like this who are so convinced that Allah is going to throw everyone in hell or throw them in hell. And they keep pulling out ayat of Allah, putting people in hellfire. I don't know why they don't read stories like these. It's not complicated. It's really not complicated. Allah is not interested in throwing you in the hellfire. مَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ. What is Allah going to get out of torturing you? He asked the question in the Quran. What is Allah going to get out of torturing you? That's your Rabb talking. That's my Rabb talking. He just wants me and you to recognize the wrong that we did, to understand that we're not, we can become defensive in front of other people to the point where we can even lie about our innocence. But when we start becoming honest with ourselves and say there's something inside me that I need to fight, there's a nafs inside me that I need to control. The ammaratun bisu. I need to do that, and I need the rahmah of my Rabb. And if I have slept in the past, Allah, I will turn to Allah and seek my Rabb's forgiveness. I'll turn to Him and become His abd again. I'll become His slave again. He's my master, I'm His slave. Ya Rabb, where am I going to go? People will hate me. Once I make this confession, my husband will hate me, she'll say. Everybody will spit at me. Nobody will think of me as a dignified person. People will say, all these years, you did this to him? Or you think you're so great after giving this speech? Oh, you think that takes all the pain away? Wow, these people. That's what's going to be said about me on social media? These women, man, these people, they think they can just talk about how they feel bad and they repent, and we're supposed to what, believe them? They're all the same. People are going to laugh at me, mock me, ridicule. They're going to do that nonstop. People's judgment will not stop of me. People's evil opinion of me will not go away. But you know what? I'm no longer obsessed with convincing people I'm innocent. I'm not convinced with telling people I'm a good person. That's no longer my concern. Because I know there's a part of me that tells me to be evil. The only thing I'm concerned with is earning the rahmah of my Rabb. That's it. Sometimes Allah will put a believer through a situation where they understand where people stand in your life, where Allah stands in your life. That's what Allah did to this person. She's a believer. Allah put her through a certain experience. And that experience is powerful enough. This experience of redemption is powerful enough for her to learn a very interesting, unique lesson of Tawbah. Tawbah is walking away from sin. But in her case, Tawbah is walking away from what people think of you. Letting that go. Letting your pride go, letting your image go, letting your social status go. Only hold on to what does Allah see. What does Allah see of you? That's it. And how honest can I be with myself? When the truth came out, this is the words that she used. So we looked at the same ayah from 2 points of view. We looked at these same words coming from Yusuf alayhi salam, and we looked at the same words coming from the wife of the minister. The language case, this is the last thing I'll share with you about this, is that in ayah number 51, we find at the end of ayah 51, أَنَا رَاوَدْتُهُ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ قالت امرأة العزيز الآن حصحص الحق أنا راودته عن نفسي. The wife of the minister said, the truth has now finally come bare. I was the one who tried to seduce him. Who's the word I being used by? Wife of the minister. Explicitly stated. Now follow along. And that is so that he may know that I did not cheat him in the unseen, and that Allah does not guide the scheme of those who cheat. And I don't declare myself innocent. The self commands to evil. I, right? So as a very natural read, what does it read like? She's still the one talking. So she was talking in 51 when she said, I tried to seduce him. She's talking in 52 when she says, I didn't cheat him in the unseen. And she's talking when she says, I don't consider myself innocent, because the word I is a continuous quote, right? And then you find in the next ayah, which we're going to discuss tomorrow, inshallah, and the king said, bring him to me. So you found before, the king spoke, the women spoke, she spoke, I, then the king spoke again. So the reason to think that this is the woman talking is pretty straightforward. It's actually the most natural read of these ayahs. Then why is the majority position leaning towards Yusuf? If it's such a natural read, if one of you guys read this in translation, that's where your mind would go, naturally, because the pronouns haven't changed. The reason they go towards him is because the style of the Quran, part of the style of the Quran is quick transitions. So arguably, even though it's very, this kind of transition is probably the only one of its kind. So the case against it, in my mind, would be that there's no other example of this kind of transition where I was being used for a certain person, by a certain person in one ayah, and the same I is being used by a completely different person in a different scene by someone else. You understand? Because you would think that they're the same person, it's the same scene. But because other cases of iltifat exist, and because this surah has unique literary qualities anyway, so just because we didn't find another example of that somewhere else, doesn't mean that it becomes impossible. That kind of transition becomes impossible. And because scenes are jumped from very, very quickly in rapid succession here, for those reasons, it's not entirely implausible to read this in that way, to read this in a way that, oh, so that happened, that was quickly done. Quickly, Allah took us back to the prison, and Yusuf alayhi salam is now speaking. I had all of that done so that the king would know that I didn't cheat the administration. So you understand? And so that's why it's a slightly more complex reading, but still not implausible. It's not an impossible read of the ayat, and that's why so many have actually preferred that reading also. The conclusion, once again, I share, is that you don't have to pick one or the other. I actually see merit to both of them. I see natural reasons to call this the minister's wife's words, and there's pretty compelling arguments for why this could be wisdom coming from Yusuf alayhi salam, which is why reject one or the other? Just like Yusuf, just like Sohaib and I were talking about earlier, I believe there's a duality intended. And that again is a unique literary feature of this surah, that there are many spots where something is said and it carries two meanings. It's going in two different directions, and each direction is giving us a lesson, right? So that's what's happening here too. So again, a very unique, beautiful quality of this remarkable surah. So with that, inshallah, I'll conclude my discussions on 52 and 53. Barakallahu wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa hakim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.